Kick-ass facts. Pew, 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 pew. Missing celebrities. Trigger warning. Self-harm and unaliving. Potentially. They're missing. We don't know for sure. Richie Edwards was musician, guitarist, and lyricist for the band Manic Street Preachers. In 1991, when questioned in an interview about the authenticity of his grim persona, he grabbed a razor blade and carved the phrase "for real" into his arm right then and there. Many believed that his disappearance in 1995 was another publicity stunt until he had been missing long enough to be presumed dead. His family swore that unaliving was never an option for him, but his car was found abandoned near a bridge that was known for the Big Jump. So that seemed to be the most likely conclusion until 2019, when new evidence suggested he may have staged his disappearance. Wait, where is it? In the 1950s, Connie Converse was a relatively unknown and unsuccessful musician. Today, she is widely credited as the world's first true singer-songwriter. Feeling like a failure, she quit music in 1961 and settled down into a quieter life. In 1974, still carrying the heavy burden of regret on her shoulders, she loaded her car, told her friends she was starting a new life, and disappeared, never to be heard from again. Jim Sullivan was a cult folk rocker in the 60s and 70s and was just days away from his big break when he disappeared. His car was found abandoned in New Mexico outside Santa Rosa. His belongings, including a guitar, were later found in a nearby hotel, but there was no trace of the man himself. Some theorize that he simply chose to disappear, but all of his friends stated that would never have happened because he would never have left his guitar behind. Barbara Newhall Follett was a bit of a writing prodigy during the Jazz Age. She published a critically acclaimed novel at the age of 13. Everybody agreed she would be the next great American writer, and she probably would have been if it hadn't been for her father. He ran off with a younger woman, leaving her mother and her penniless. She started working as a typist at age 16 and was never known to write again. In 1939, after 10 years of this, Follett had an argument with her husband, left her house, and simply disappeared. He didn't look very hard for her, and police and the press weren't even notified until 1966. She disappeared in 1939. Her 1927 book, The House Without Windows, tells the story of a young girl who, disillusioned with the constraints of conventional society, runs away to live in the forest. In 2000, Rico Harris was a promising basketball player and a member of the Harlem Globetrotters. He was an alcoholic and hit rock bottom when he was fired from his job as a security guard in LA for being drunk at work. He packed up his car to drive from his mother's home to his girlfriend's in Seattle. His car was found with all of his stuff in it outside of Sacramento. For days afterward, people made reports of seeing a tall man wandering the side of the highway, and human footprints matching the approximate size were found, but they stopped abruptly. Many believe he was picked up as a hitchhiker, but after that, it's a mystery. Everyone knows the story. Maybe you don't, I don't know your life. Of Amelia Earhart, one of the greatest aviators of her time, who disappeared in 1937 in an attempt to fly around the world. Her plane simply didn't vanish, as everyone thought, for years. Naval ships were receiving radio transmissions from her for days after her plane landed on a small, uninhabited island in the Pacific, too low on fuel to carry on. Days after the transmission stopped, after her plane was likely carried out to sea, the U.S. Navy sent planes to fly over the island. They didn't see any planes or people, so they wrote off all the credible transmissions as a hoax. They never sent anyone down onto the island to check for sure. It is now believed, due to a dig that turned up artifacts from the time, that she survived on the island for many months. A body was likely never found because the island is inhabited by coconut crabs, large creatures that have been known to eat whole animals and carry off their bones. Jean Spangler was a 1940s actress on the brink of becoming a star. One evening in 1949, she told her sister-in-law she was going to meet her ex-husband and then to a film shoot that would last into the night. She never returned. Later, her purse was found in a park with the straps ripped. Inside, there was a note that read, "Can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while Mother is away." The note was addressed to a Kirk. Famous actor Kirk Douglas called the police specifically to say that it wasn't him. She was in his last movie. Kirk is not that common a name, and who proactively calls the police to say it's not me? Suspicious. A friend of Spangler's would later say she was on her way to have an abortion, which was illegal at the time and usually done unsafely. Whether she died in the process or something happened to her on the way there, nobody knows. Jim Robinson, also known as Sweet Jimmy, was an American boxer from Miami. He fought Muhammad Ali, when he was still called Cassius Clay, in Miami Beach in 1961. Robinson fought for a few more years, compiling a record of 8 wins and 25 losses. He was knocked out 16 times. He retired from boxing in 1963 and became a fixture in local pool halls and street corners in Liberty City. In 1968, he came out of retirement to fight Kent Green in Miami Beach. In 1979, Sports Illustrated writer and photographer tracked down Robinson in Miami for what was known as his last interview to date. Since this interview, Robinson's whereabouts have been unknown. In 2009, a writer at ESPN wrote an article about his 6-year attempt to find Robinson with no success.